Another video of cops trying to bring a situation under control. Another round of uproar from those seeking to make it all about race. Is there any evidence that is the case? There was no evidence that transplanting the face of one human onto the body of another would actually work. We'll talk with a doctor who made history. And if we are indeed to learn from history, then among the times in American lore we must never forget is what happened due to a fear of the Red Menace and the man who ruined countless lives. Unlike some who would cover news in the same method, we actually seek some common sense and fact. I'm Ed Berliner. This is Midpoint.
Police say they were called to the pool after reports of kids fighting at that community pool. You can see from the video the uniformed officer throws a 14-year-old girl to the ground in her swimsuit, pins her down with his knees, and then, this is what everybody's talking about, he draws his gun on the teens.
It should have been nothing more than chasing kids from a swimming pool where the residents claim they didn't belong. Instead, it has turned into just the latest flashpoint featuring law enforcement and those who claim it's all about race and nothing more. That leads off the news call for this Monday as we get to work with Christopher Ingraham, who covers politics and more at the Washington Post, and Danielle Moodie-Mills, advisor on LGBT policy and racial justice at the Center for American Progress. I thank you both for joining us today. And Danielle, I'm going to begin with you, because I would gather that you have seen the videotape in question. What was your first reaction?
I was absolutely startled, Ed. I've never seen a scene like that with young kids and a police officer drawing his gun and just waving it at them for no reason. It was very unsettling. And then to see him with his knees on the back of a young 14-year-old girl in a bathing suit, which clearly she has no, gun or knife or any type of weapon, and to be forcing her face into the ground like that, it was very, very startling.
Well, Danielle, if I might, let me interrupt one moment. We're just showing the video right here. And before I get to you, Chris, I do want to bring it up to Danielle's point here. The knee in the back is a standard procedure for police when it comes to keeping someone on the ground who they are trying to subdue. And as for the gun, if you're to look at the video, you'll find that to the officer's right, two young men were approaching the officer and they were making some threatening gestures towards him. He does not know who that is at that point. All he sees out of the corner of his eye is people coming up on him. So in that sense, officers will draw a weapon. Isn't it fair to say that, Danielle, that we still don't know a lot and we're making a lot of assumptions here?
I think it's fair to say that we don't know a lot, but I think it's also fair to say that officers have certain procedures that they should be following. And according to reports, there were 12 officers dispatched to that scene with a group of teenagers. So I find it really startling that an officer in that position faced with teenagers would decide to escalate a situation rather than use the skills that I think that they've been taught to de-escalate it.
All right, Chris, I'll get it to you next, because obviously I hope that you have seen it as well here. And there's a couple of points that Danielle's brought up and that I have brought up as well. What's your take?
Well, I think what Danielle says about de-escalating the situation, that's absolutely right. And I think that's one of the challenges that we're seeing with policing in the country today, and that's why we're seeing so many controversies like this one. It seems to me in a lot of these situations we have police who are often in a mindset of suppress and occupy rather than protect and serve. Good policing, it's not just about going in with your guns drawn and telling everybody to do what you tell them to. It's also about building relationships with the community members and de-escalating things. And if you're a police officer...
Well, hold on one sec, Chris. If you don't
sure.
mind my interrupting, how are you supposed to then, because you're in the middle of a situation where you have people around you, you have no way of knowing, and again, let's be very frank here. There are teenagers across America that are armed these days. You have no way of knowing if anybody is armed in a situation like this. So how do you build trust when you're in a situation like that? And what you need to do is bring the situation under control. Isn't it fair to say that at that point, you have to do what it takes to basically tamp things down and bring some order back?
Well, I'll say one thing. I mean, these were all kids, and they were all in their bathing suits. So the likelihood of them hiding a weapon somewhere, it's pretty slim. Another thing that I'll add is that in interviews with some of the other people who were present, some of the other kids who were present said, look, some of these other cops, they were being perfectly friendly and nice, and they were helping to simmer things down. It was really just this one police officer who ended up in this altercation. Now, how he got there, how that might have happened, there could be any number of ways that would happen. But it says two things. It says, you know, first, you know, when you're a police officer in this situation, it's hard to go in and figure out what to do. And so, you know, having the fact that there were these other police officers there who weren't getting in altercations with these kids, I mean, it speaks to a very dynamic situation, and it also says that maybe there are multiple ways this officer could have, you know, handled the situation.
And realizing we have a long way to go to decide exactly what happened here, so everybody needs to calm down. All right, let's move on here. The American Embassy in Indonesia will celebrate the 4th of July a month early to avoid conflict with the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. Danielle, there are a lot of people who see a problem with this here because they're claiming that America is just bending to the Islamic will. But then again, there are others who say, wait a minute, knowing what the general temperature is around the country right now, this might not be a dumb thing to do. This might be pretty smart.
I think it's a smart thing to do, and I also think it's a respectful thing to do. I understand that when the U.S. Embassy, wherever it is in the world, it's a sovereign place, right? It means that we adhere to the rules and holidays of our own country. That said, if you're trying to build a rapport within a country, it would be nice if we would then follow their holiday schedule, especially if you'd like people to participate and join in. And so I don't see anything wrong with them wanting to celebrate the holiday earlier, observe Ramadan.
Well, I think it's also about keeping a lot of the violence
their home
down.
Country.
Wouldn't you agree too, Danielle? A lot of it is about keeping the violence level down at this point, not trying to give anybody a reason to attack.
I don't want to say that it has anything to do with violence. I definitely think it has everything to do with being respectful. Okay. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Chris, I'm going to come to you on something with national security right now, because the president is at the G7 meeting, and he basically announced today that we don't have a complete strategy yet to fight ISIS because it requires commitments on the part of the Iraqis when he is sitting right next to the Iraqi leader. Was this a slap in the face by the president saying that you guys better go ahead and get your job done before we do anything?
Well, I mean, the situation in Iraq is currently a tough one. I mean, as we've seen with the recent military happenings there with ISIS, you know, the surprising thing about ISIS is how they're still able to keep making gains. And then you have administration members going out in the media saying, well, no, you know, things will get better in just a week or now, or, you know, we're almost right at the corner where things really start to turn around. And then over and over, we see that you know, we see these more gains on the horizons despite the airstrikes, despite everything. So, you know, keeping the Iraqi military and police forces sufficiently trained and sufficiently disciplined, that's been a challenge since day one. And that was one thing that people were arguing about before we even went into Iraq. And I think what this shows us is that even here we are 12 years later, it is still a big issue, if not the #1 security issue in that country.
I got about 90 seconds left. I got two things left. I want to get a quick comment from both of you. 1 Million Moms has launched a petition asking Fox to take the show Lucifer from its TV lineup because they say it does glorify the devil. Chris, there are some people saying just let it go because if you give him any more attention here, you'll only help increase the ratings. And some people say, shouldn't it be the parents' responsibility to deal with this at home?
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot about individual responsibility in this country, right? That's, you know, individual responsibility starts at home and it starts with the TV remote. If you don't like it, turn it off. You know, another thing I'll just say, this does add to the publicity. I certainly hadn't heard of this show at all until this petition came aboard. You know, and I think the fact that if we're talking about the content, if we want to talk about the devil and we want to talk about, you know, glorifying the devil, I can think of few things that would diminish the stand of the devil in this country than portraying him as a nightclub owner in L.A.
Yeah, well, not only that, at least he's in L.A. too. And by the way, the Duggars are a whole lot worse than these guys are in the minds of many people here with this show. I got about 45 seconds left. Danielle, to you. TV producers in the Czech Republic are starting a show called Holiday in the Protectorate, where people will have to live and recreate 1939 household life in the puppet state set up by the Third Reich, and they will have to undergo interrogation from the Gestapo. This is ridiculous.
I think it's outrageous. I mean, is this where television is going? I know that this is not in the United States, that it's in the Czech Republic, but I don't really think that there is any need to kind of recreate this situation for a modern day audience. That's what we have history books for, and I just think that this is over the top and unnecessary.
Not only that, but I think one infuriated viewer in the Czech Republic put it best when he or she wrote in, "What's next? Big Brother Auschwitz." That is absolutely frightening. There's no reason for stuff like this. And oh yeah, by the way, Honey Boo Boo's gone, so there is actually some good things going on in reality television. Danielle Moodie-Mills and Chris Ingraham, always a pleasure to have you both on the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up next, living a life with someone else's face. It's being done. You'll hear about it right here on Midpoint.